Americans held hostage, abandoned behind enemy lines. Day 27.
Day 27, Americans held hostage behind enemy lines. We have a lot of news to bring on that front tonight. Now, tonight, let's start with your freedom is under assault. Dr. Joe Biden, not sure what medical school he went to, won't take no for an answer. Now, it's your body, it's his choice, with an unconstitutional, illegal, unethical federal vaccine mandate that, by the way, he said he would never support. One that Jen Psaki told us that it is not the role of the federal government to do. One that Nancy Pelosi said they don't have the authority to do it. And Kamala Harris was the one that said it's your body, you get to make the choice. And to make matters worse, this has nothing to do with your health or safety. Instead, this is a cold, it is a calculated, it is a political ploy. Biden's presidency has been a complete disaster in every single way. Think of one thing. Can you name one thing that he's done that you could point to that you think is a success? He abandoned Americans behind enemy lines. Can't even tell us how many he abandoned. Darrell Issa says around 500. 13 American heroes are now dead because of Joe's Afghan disaster. When he had control of Kabul, he could have gotten every American out safely, every Afghan ally out safely, all our equipment out safely. His poll numbers are in the basement. He's desperate to galvanize support around a shared common enemy. That enemy is some Americans that don't buy into his one-size-fits-all unscientific medicine. Think about this. One size fits all. No medical exemptions. Let's start there. How is that following science? It's not, especially those who refuse to follow his vaccine rules and mandates, including Republican governors, by the way, who won't act like mini dictators, who actually believe strongly in a principle that Joe gives lip service to, and it's called liberty and freedom and choice. Joe says it's not about freedom. It's not about choice. It is about freedom. It is about your choice. It is about your unique medical history and your current medical condition and what your doctor thinks, not a phony doctor or TV guys that think they're doctor or play doctor on TV. Americans that value their medical privacy, Americans that value doctor-patient confidentiality, and anyone else who believes in personal freedom. Joe Biden's heartfelt unity pledge, oh, that lasted all but 7 months. Now it's us versus them, and Dr. Joe's patience is wearing thin. He wants to lecture you and scold you for not listening.
Restore the soul and secure the future of America requires so much more than words. It requires the most elusive of all things in a democracy, unity.
This is not about freedom or personal choice. It's about protecting yourself.
My whole soul is in this, bringing America together, uniting our people.
My message to unvaccinated Americans is this: what more is there to wait for? What more do you need to see?
With unity, we can do great things, important things.
We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin.
This is our historic moment of crisis and challenge, and unity is the path forward.
And your refusal has cost all of us. So please do the right thing.
Now, clearly, Joe's unity pledge was a lie. Now, half the country is, what, enemy number one? Because they don't want to follow Dr. Joe. In fact, Democrats say nicer things about illegal immigrants and even the Taliban, some of them, than the 80 million unvaccinated Americans. I guess it's open season on them. Do you know anything about their medical condition, their medical history? You know anything about what their doctors are advising them? According to the Biden administration, 20 years after 9/11, the Taliban is professional and they are businesslike. But if you're unvaccinated and you're an American unvaccinated, you're ignorant, you're selfish, and his patience is running out. Take a look.
Time to start prioritizing ICU beds for people who are vaccinated.
They're saying the Taliban is businesslike and professional. Their interior minister has an FBI wanted poster. He's got a $10 million bounty on his head.
In order to get those people out, we had to work with some members of the Taliban to press them and to work in a businesslike manner to get them out.
I just think if you don't want to play by any of those rules and then all of a sudden you end up in the hospital, I feel bad that you but maybe you shouldn't go and take up the resources from someone else.
Immigrants coming to our country, with newcomers coming with their hopes and dreams and aspirations, with their optimism and determination to make the future better for their families, well, those are American traits.
So, according to the left, crossing our borders illegally, breaking our laws, that's heroic. No vaccine mandates for illegal aliens, no mandatory tests, just Joe's overcrowded cages in the middle of a pandemic with a very high rate of COVID positivity, including those not tested. And then, by the way, then you get to pick the state of your choice. You'll be dispersed all over the country, not even getting a COVID test. Joe's following the science, really? And you want to lecture Americans and scold Americans and tell them how bad they are and how they should be hated and give license to attacks on people that have different views or medical conditions you might not even know about. But you better get the vaccine or Dr. Joe Biden is going to unleash the full force of the federal government against you and your loved ones and your employer, and you will be canceled in society altogether. You'll be shut out of everything. Illegal aliens, by the way, I see that Mayorkas won't use that term anymore, starting today, apparently, or yesterday. They get no mandates and free trips to the state, right? They get free trips, no mandates, get to go to the state of their choice. And they get free health care and free education. You pay for that, all while totally exempt from this mandate. Take a look.
United States.
But it's a requirement for people at a business with more than 100 people. It is not a requirement for migrants at the southern border. Why?
That's correct. Go ahead.
The rules don't apply to illegal immigrants or members of Congress or their staffers. It wasn't even going to apply to postal workers until public pressure forced the administration to reverse course late today. But it does apply to millions of law-abiding Americans. It doesn't matter if you have a rare pre-existing condition and your doctor thinks taking the vaccine is very risky and not the right choice for you. It doesn't matter if you had COVID and you have T-cell immunity from a prior infection. Cleveland Clinic says the science is pretty clear on that so far. It doesn't matter if you prefer to keep your medical decisions private. The frail, the weak, the mentally incompetent, impaired president, Dr. Joe knows best. And, of course, the mandate is deeply unconstitutional on top of all of this. At least 10 governors are now planning legal action, including Governor Noem, Governor Abbott, Governor DeSantis, and Shadow President Chief of Staff Ron Klain. He's now apparently congratulating himself, calling the new mandate the ultimate workaround for a federal vaccine requirement. But anyone with a functioning brain knows that the mandate is in serious legal jeopardy. Even fake news CNN attorneys recognize this. And that's why a few months ago, several top Democrats promised there would be no federal vaccine mandate because it's not the role of the federal government. Take a look how things change.
No, I don't think it should be mandatory. I wouldn't demand to be mandatory.
Perhaps the federal government should step in and issue mandates, and if not, are you putting the needs of unvaccinated people ahead of the needs of vaccinated people?
Well, I think the question here, one, that's not the role of the federal government. That is the role that institutions, private sector entities, and others may take.
We cannot require someone to be vaccinated. That's just not what we can do.
I am all for more vaccination, but I have nothing further to say on that except that we're looking into those policies. And quite honestly, as people are doing that locally, those are individual local decisions as well.
I don't think you'll ever see a mandating of vaccine, particularly for the general public.
Oh, okay. Another big change. The goalposts move like every day. Why would anyone have any faith? Want to know where vaccine hesitancy comes from? The people that change their mind every 5 seconds and the people that were wrong in every prediction they ever made. They keep changing everything every single day. No mask, one mask, two masks, vax or mask. Now it's vax and mask. Now it's vax, mask, and add a booster to it. Apparently they were all lying, and now Biden is in a desperate attempt at a political scapegoat, and unvaccinated Americans fit the bill. Same guy that left open borders and no testing of illegal immigrants with a high rate of COVID positivity and then dumped in Joe's cages. That's right, a petri dish, if you will. And Dr. Joe just can't understand why anyone would be vaccine hesitant. Why on earth would anyone not trust the experts? You know, the ones that were wrong about the origins of COVID. and some actually really lied. We now know the transmissibility of COVID, the use of ventilators, the vaccine timeline, the threshold for herd immunity, the ones who promised 2 weeks to slow the spread, the ones who told us not to wear masks, then 1 mask, then 2 masks, then masks outdoors, then no masks outdoors, vaxxed and masked, vax masked, and now boosted, and on and on. Can you keep up? Even Joe and Kamala, they expressed a hesitancy over the vaccine. Maybe they forgot.
Let's just say there's a vaccine that is approved and even distributed before the election. Would you get it?
Well, I think that's going to be an issue for all of us. I will say that I would not trust Donald Trump.
Getting vaccinated is the single best defense against COVID-19 and its variants. It's the single best defense.
I trust scientists, but I don't trust Donald Trump. And at this moment, the American people can't either. I'm going to continue to do everything I can to encourage the unvaccinated to get vaccinated. That includes addressing hesitancy and misinformation head on.
Actually, unlike Joe and Kamala, I actually believe in the science. I believe in the science of vaccination under Trump, and I believe in them now. And as I said many times, I'm not a doctor. I can't tell you what to do. I don't know anything about your medical history. I don't know anything about your current medical condition. But you better take this seriously. People die. I know people that ended up on ventilators, some that barely survived, and some that died. I am a radio and television host. That's right. I'm a member of the mob in the media, except we're the good side of the mob. And we also are members of the press. I'm not a medical doctor. I didn't go to medical school. Now, we will do our best to keep you informed and bring on experts with all different points of view, but only you know your unique medical history and current condition, and only you, in consultation with your doctors, should make that informed, important decision about a vaccine. Not any television host, and frankly, not any swamp member in D.C., not any of the wannabe doctors on fake news CNN or MSDNC, certainly not Dr. Joe Biden. I'd like to know what medical school he went to, or anybody in the federal government without a medical license. You have a personal responsibility to protect yourself, your family, and others. And how you do that is your business, not mine. But you do have that responsibility. Not Dr. Joe's either. Individual freedom, liberty is a precious right in this country. Once you lose it, it will be gone forever. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.